When things have become clear to the ardent meditating Brahmin, all doubts vanish, because he has seen things together with the cause. When things have become clear to the ardent meditating Brahmin, all doubts vanish, because he has experienced the cessation of conditions. When things have become clear to the ardent meditating Brahmin, he stands, having destroyed Mara's armies, like the sun illuminating the sky. These were the first 3 verses that the Buddha spoke after his awakening. So today, more about the weeks, what happened in the weeks after the Buddha's awakening. Just about 2 weeks ago we had Vesak. So at that time the Buddha would still be meditating under the Bodhi tree, experiencing the happiness of liberation, the bliss of liberation. And so, how does the Buddha reflect after his awakening? How does he see the world? And who are the first beings who are going to meet him? After the night of the Buddha's awakening, he continues to meditate under the Bodhi tree for 1 week, and then is reflecting or fathoming dependent origination in all its aspects. And so in the Udana, the first 3 suttas in the Udana, inspired verses by the Buddha. Thus have I heard, at one time the Blessed One was dwelling near Uruvela, on the bank of Niranjana river, at the root of the Bodhi tree, having just realized awakening. At that time the Blessed One sat at the root of the Bodhi tree for 7 days in one session, experiencing the bliss of liberation. Then, after the end of the 7 days, after emerging from that samadhi, in the first watch of the night, he gave close attention to dependent origination in forward order thus. When this is, that is. From the arising of this comes the arising of that. Namely, with ignorance as condition, volitional formations come to be. With volitional formations as condition, consciousness comes to be. With consciousness as condition, name and form comes to be. With name and form as condition, the 6 sense bases. With the 6 sense bases as condition, contact. With contact as condition, feeling. With feeling as condition, craving. With clinging as condition, becoming. With becoming as condition, birth. With birth as condition, aging, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, and despair come to be. This is the origination of this whole mass of suffering. Then, on realizing the significance of that, the Blessed One spoke on that occasion this inspired utterance. When things have become clear to the ardent meditating Brahmin, all doubts vanish, because he has seen things together with their causes. So this was 1 week after the awakening, the first watch of the night. The Buddha contemplates dependent origination in forwards order, and then the second watch of the night, he gives close attention to dependent origination in reverse order. When this isn't, that isn't. From the cessation of this comes the cessation of that. Namely, with the cessation of ignorance comes the cessation of volitional formations. With the cessation of volitional formations, cessation of consciousness. With the cessation of consciousness, the cessation of name and form. With the cessation of name and form, the cessation of the 6 sense spheres. With the cessation of the 6 sense spheres, the cessation of contact. With the cessation of contact, the cessation of feeling. With the cessation of feeling, the cessation of craving. With the cessation of craving, the cessation of clinging. With the cessation of clinging, the cessation of becoming. with the cessation of becoming, the cessation of birth. And with the cessation of birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair cease. This is the cessation of the whole mass of suffering. Then, on realizing the significance of that, the Blessed One spoke on that occasion this inspired utterance. When things have become clear to the ardent meditating Brahmin, all doubts vanish, because he has experienced the cessation of conditions. And then in the third watch of the night, the Buddha gives close attention to dependent origination in forward and reverse order. When this is, that is. From the arising of this comes the arising of that. When this isn't, that isn't. From the cessation of this comes the cessation of that. And then going through the 12 links of dependent origination in forward and reverse order. And the Buddha then speaks this last verse that I already quoted before. When things have become clear to the ardent meditating Brahmin, he stands, having destroyed Mara's armies, like the sun illuminating the sky. Yeah, so the first weeks after awakening start profoundly with the Buddha fathoming dependent origination in all its details. And yeah, the Buddha didn't call his teaching Buddhism. That word was invented by Europeans in the 19th century. He called his teaching the Dhamma. And the Dhamma is the law of causality that the Buddha discovered. So this is the law of nature, of conditioned phenomena in the universe, of the law how sankharas, conditioned phenomena, originate and come to their cessation. And so the Buddha, by his awakening, understood that law of nature, the Dhamma, and he also found something beyond conditions, beyond causality, Nibbana. And so what the Buddha teaches is this law of nature to which he awakened, and then teaches his way of practice so that people can realize the same Dhamma, the same awaken to the same law of nature, the same causality, and understand that and see that for themselves. And this specific conditionality will always be the same in the universe, whether it's 30 years ago in the past or 90 years in the future, and whether Buddha teaches that or not. Also in this sense, that Dhamma is timeless. So, yeah, that sort of cultures change and societies change, but the Dhamma doesn't change. This is always the same law of nature, how conditioned phenomena originate and come to their cessation. And so in brief, one could say that dependent origination describes the causal origination of the 5 khandhas, the 5 aggregates, or the six sense spheres, or even more brief, the origination of dukkha, of suffering, and the cessation of dukkha. So how does this process of origination come to be, and how can this process be brought to an end? On a small scale, in the in the heart or in the mind, and also on a cosmic scale, you could say, the 6 sense spheres, on the 5 khandhas, the 5 aggregates, they're all, so they're everything that we can experience. This is of the entire cosmos, you could say, and so dependent origination is also the explanation of the Buddha, how the universe or how our experience originates, and how this whole mass of suffering can be brought to an end. And this law of causality has 2 principles. The Buddha says, when when this is, that is, and from the arising of this comes the arising of that. So the first one, when this is, that is, would be similar like, let's say if you switch on a light switch, then the light turns on more or less instantly. While the other one, from the arising of that, this, that arises, would be, for example, you plant an apple seed and then later an apple tree grows out of it and you get some apples as a result of planting this apple tree. So it's a causality that unfolds over time. And so these are these two principles, causal principles, and they sort of interact. They're just two practical examples, let's say practicing mindfulness of breathing. Then the Buddha gives this instruction, you train yourself to still the bodily formations, or you train yourself to breathe in and out, stilling the mental formations. And also this word is sankhara, just like independent origination. And so on the one hand, if you practice mindfulness of breathing to still the bodily formations and mental formations, the experience of the body and in the mind, then this will have some effect in the present, sort of immediately, but then also sort of longer term, maybe over years, developing a different sort of inclination of the mind, or different, the experience becomes different, like how your mind is. And then also the Buddha says over even future lives, so that might even have a result then even beyond this present life. And so if we practice mindfulness of breathing for the stilling of formations, then we can experience sort of cessation to some extent. That would be one practical example. Or realizing the Four Noble Truths, for example, like someone realizes stream entry, that will have effects in the present. For example, the person becomes free from identity views and doubt and uncertainty in the present. But then also, because of that, it's also cessation of suffering beyond this lifetime. And then because then this person will have a maximum of 7 lifetimes until he realizes complete liberation. So this one event, realizing the Four Noble Truths, will have effects now, but then also in the future. And so this would be some examples for this principle of immediate causality, when this is, that is, or from the arising of this comes the arising of that, in terms of causality over time. And it's also nice to note how the Buddha expresses that seeing causality, understanding causality, abandons doubt. Just that all doubts vanish because he has seen things together with the causes, and because he has experienced the cessation of conditions. So yeah, it's nice to remember in this way that this is the way to overcome doubt. And then if you understand how something works, that, for example, understanding the origin of suffering, the cessation of suffering, the way of practice leading to the cessation of suffering, then the way you become free from doubts, the more you see this in your own experience. Yeah, also interesting that the Buddha says one of the benefits of developing the perception of non-self is that we will see causes and dependently arisen phenomena. So the deeper you understand the teaching of non-self, the more you see dependent origination, or seeing things as non-self means seeing things in terms of causes and results. And so that's also something the Buddha mentions in one discourse in the Anguttara Nikaya. So these are like connected with each other, these ways of looking at experience. And after contemplating dependent origination, or seeing dependent origination for one night, then the Buddha sits down again under the Bodhi tree for 7 days in one session, and again in meditation, experiencing the bliss of liberation. And then after 7 days have passed, he again emerges from that samadhi, and then he's surveying the cosmos with the eyes of an awakened one, and sees the cosmos and all beings ablaze with fire of desire, aversion, and delusion, and afflicted by becoming. This in Pali the word is bhava. And so the Buddha is then talking, in this short verse that he expresses, he's talking briefly about this aspect of dependent origination, becoming, bhava, in Pali, that usually it's translated as being, becoming, or existence. How becoming arises dependent on upadana, clinging. The word upadana, literally, dana means giving, and adana means taking something. So it's the opposite of giving, and then upadana is more like sort of a prefix which sort of strengthens the word. So basically, you're appropriating something or taking up something, and the sense of appropriating something as I and mine. So either, let's say, appropriating the body as I, or appropriating some external things as mine, belonging to me. And how this leads to suffering, and how suffering ceases by the cessation of clinging. This Pali word bhava is sometimes used for a certain form of existence. So, for example, a human existence, or existence as animal, or as hungry ghost, or as deva, or Brahma. That would be different kind of bhava, of existence, becoming. So the Buddha mentions, for example, 3 kinds of becoming: the becoming sense sphere, in the existence in the sense sphere, of form and formless, and so more or less rebirth in a certain realm, a form of existence in this sense. And so becoming, in the sense, just like you would say, I've become a human being, and not like an animal, for example. So sometimes this word is used for that. But it's also used in some other context. So, another meaning of the word is just how we use it in general language. Like someone says, I want to become a famous actor, or I want to become a doctor, or want to become a millionaire, whatever. And so just like you want to be something, like they think, okay, it would be great to be that, and then you want to become that. Or you don't like what you are, and then this would be vibhava, like not wanting to be something. And so this Pali word bhava is also used in the sense of being, sort of your impression of who or what you are, so of your sense of identity or impression, who or what you are. And also the whole process of dependent origination is sometimes what is called a process of further becoming. So this continuing of suffering and further conditioned existence is also a process of becoming. After the second week, so the Buddha is more or less surveying the cosmos, all states of becoming, of being, and seeing that they are all decaying and suffering, and how he realized liberation from all becoming by the cessation of clinging. So I just read this very short quote of the Buddha. Just about a little bit more than one page. So these are also in Pali, these are verses, here it's just prose. So more or less, the Buddha has realized liberation and out of looking back at conditioned existence or at all states of being, all states of becoming. And then on realizing the significance of that, he speaks these verses. This cosmos is burning, afflicted by contact. It calls disease a self. By whatever means it supposes anything, it becomes otherwise than that. Becoming otherwise, the cosmos is attached to becoming, afflicted by becoming, and yet delights in that very becoming. Where there is delight, there is fear. What one fears is stressful. This holy life is lived for the abandoning of becoming. Whatever contemplatives or Brahmins say that liberation from becoming is by means of becoming, all of them are not liberated from becoming, I say. And whatever contemplatives and Brahmins say that the escape from becoming is by means of non-becoming, all of them have not escaped from becoming, I say. This suffering comes into play independent on independence on acquisition. With the ending of every clinging, there is no suffering coming into play. Look at this cosmos. Beings afflicted by thick ignorance are unreleased from passion for what has come to be. All levels of becoming, anywhere, in any way, are impermanent, suffering, and subject to change. Seeing this as it's come to be with right wisdom, one abandons craving for becoming and doesn't delight in non-becoming. From the total ending of craving comes cessation and fading away without reminder, nibbana. For the monk liberated through the cessation of clinging, there is no further becoming. He has conquered Mara, won the battle, having gone beyond becoming such. So it was Udana 3, Sutta number 10. Udana number 3, and then Sutta number 10. And after this surveying the cosmos with the eye of an awakened one, the Buddha walks from the Bodhi tree to another tree close by, the goatherd's banyan tree, and he meditates there for another week, experiencing the bliss of liberation. And then he has a first encounter with another being. A Brahmin meets the Buddha. He is probably just on the way somewhere, and encounters him, and the Buddha gives him a short teaching. This is Udana 1 and then Sutta number 4. So then this said, a haughty Brahmin approached the Buddha And having approached him, he exchanged polite greetings with him and stands to one side. And he asked the Buddha, "How, good Gautama, is one a Brahmin, and what are the things that make one a Brahmin?" And then the Buddha speaks this short verse to teach him. "A Brahmin is one who has discarded evil states, not haughty, free from stains, self-controlled. Perfect in knowledge, one who has lived the holy life. He might rightly use the word Brahmin, who has no swellings of pride anywhere in the world." So yeah, just one short verse for the Brahmin passing by. And next the Buddha goes to the Mucalinda tree, meditating there under this tree. And at that time, out of season, a great rainstorm comes for 7 days with rain clouds, cold winds, and unsettled weather. And then Mucalinda, the Naga-King, leaves his dwelling place, and a Naga is a spirit, you could say a dragon or serpent-like spirit from the lowest heavenly realm, the realm of the 4 great kings. And so this sort of dragon-like or serpent-like spirit, he comes to the Buddha and he's encircling him with his sort of body, and he spreads his great hood over him to protect the Buddha from cold and heat, from flies and mosquitoes and wind and sun, and from creeping creatures. And at the end of those 7 days, then the Buddha emerges from his samadhi, and the Naga-King Mucalinda removes himself again, and he's changing his appearance and appears in the form of a young man and stands in front of him with his hands folded in Anjali, and the Buddha gives the Naga-King a short teaching in verse. Blissful is seclusion for one who is content, for one who has learned the Dhamma and who sees. Blissful is non-harming in the world, restraint towards living beings. Blissful is dispassion in the world, the overcoming of sense desires. But abandoning of the conceit I am, this is truly the supreme bliss. Next week, the Buddha is going from the Mucalinda tree to another tree, the Rajayatana tree, and then he meditates there continues to meditate for 7 days. And then after that, the second human beings actually, after the Brahmin, approach the Buddha, 2 merchants, Tapussa and Bhallika. They are traveling on the road from Ukala to the countryside. Where this is unclear. And then a deva, a divine being, appears to these 2 men, to Tapussa and Bhallika, who is a former relative of them. So some relative has passed away, and he's informing them, there is the Blessed One. He dwells at the root of this tree and has just realized awakening, and go and serve the Blessed One some cooked grain meal and honey balls. This will be for a long time welfare and happiness. So the Deva is encouraging this former relative who has passed away, is encouraging these 2 men to go to visit the Buddha and offer him some food for the first time after his awakening. My understanding would be because the Buddha has just dwelt in deep meditation that he wouldn't need much nutriment anymore at that time. The body is very peaceful anyway then. So the the two merchants, they go to offer the food to the Buddha, and interestingly, the Buddha doesn't have a bowl at that time. So he thinks the Tathagatas do not accept things with their hands. What shall I use now to accept this food? And then the four great kings, the rulers of the lowest heavenly realm, some devas, they notice that and they come to offer bowls to the Buddha made of stone, interestingly. So he is the only one who has some alms bowl made of stone. Usually the monks would use clay or metal. So Sujata becomes the first lay woman who takes refuge in the Buddha before his awakening already, and offers him the meal before the awakening. And these two men become the first male lay followers of the Buddha. Even before the monks' community has been founded, they just visit the Buddha and are inspired by him, and then they, after the Buddha has finished his meal, they go to refuge to the Buddha and the Dhamma. So there's the two refuges, the Sangha, the noble Sangha does not exist yet. And they say, may the Blessed One remember us as slave followers who have gone for refuge from this day forward for life. And so as even mentioned here, they are the first two statement lay followers in the world. After that, Mara is also visiting the Buddha, trying to challenge the Buddha, saying that he has abandoned the path to purity because he abandoned asceticism. And in the later legends, usually this encounter with Mara is before the awakening, while in the suttas there are only discourses where Mara visits the Buddha after awakening. This word Mara is used for three things. They are also connected with each other. On the one hand, Mara is used for defilements, unwholesome mind states, qualities that prevent awakening. Second meaning is more or less Mara is what is subject to death. Or sometimes the Buddha says form is what belongs to Mara, or feeling is what belongs to Mara, because ultimately it is subject to decay, and so it belongs to Mara. So in the sense that this is also one way he uses this word. And the third one is, you could say, an entity, like a spirit that tries to prevent people from awakening or harass people if they have realized awakening already. But the Buddha answers with a verse that he actually hasn't abandoned the path to purity, but has realized awakening, and Mara has to leave and is sad and dejected and vanishes defeated. After that, the Buddha continues to stay at the goatherd's banya tree and reflects about the path of practice that leads to his awakening, or has led to his awakening, about the four foundations of mindfulness and the five faculties. So then, when he's staying there, while he's in seclusion alone, he reflects, this is the one-way path for the purification of beings, for the overcoming of sorrow and limitation, for the passing away of pain and displeasure, for the achievement of the method, for the realization of Nibbana. That is the four foundations of mindfulness. What for? Here a monk dwells contemplating the body as a body, ardent, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed covetousness and mental dejection with regard to the world. He dwells contemplating feelings as feelings, mind as mind. He dwells seeing the Dhamma in phenomena, ardent, clearly comprehending and mindful, having removed covetousness and displeasure with regard to the world. This is the only path for the purification of beings, the four foundations of mindfulness. So the Buddha, now having realized awakening, sort of directing his mind to the causes that led to awakening and sort of surveying all possible causes, and then noticing that. And then similar, when he's under the goatherd's banyan tree, reflecting these five spiritual faculties, when developed and cultivated, have the deathless as their ground, the deathless as their destination, the deathless as their final goal. What five? The faculty of faith, the faculty of energy, the faculty of mindfulness, the faculty of samadhi, composure of mind, the faculty of wisdom. These five faculties, when developed and cultivated, they have the deathless, complete liberation as their final goal. Yes.
Should we say no to all desires?
Sorry?
Should we say no to all desires that arise?
In terms of, let's say, depends on how you define desire, but generally there is this Pali word chanda, something like desire or will, and it depends to what is this desire directed. So some forms of desires or some forms of wanting something actually lead to continuation of dukkha, of suffering, and some desires or some forms of will are actually part of the path to awakening. So let's say, for example, the desire or the will or aspiration to abandon unwholesome states and to develop wholesome states and to bring them to perfection, that would be a wholesome desire or will, while then desire, craving for sensuality, craving for becoming, for example, that would be like a desire that leads to further becoming and suffering. So it depends to what is desire directed, and sort of having a powerful intention or will is part of the path to awakening and to actually develop that. So usually our sort of desires or intentions are sort of scattered and going in all kinds of directions. And then by practicing the Dhamma, we can sort of gradually, let's say, notice more which of our intentions or desires or what we want is actually unwholesome and which are actually wholesome, and we should even develop them. So for example, the Buddha talks about these four right efforts, and then this quality of effort can be weaker or stronger. So this sort of will or intention to, let's say, abandon unwholesome states or develop wholesome states, it actually can get stronger, and that's part of the path of practice. So it's important to, for example, let's say you have this desire to meditate, or this desire to keep precepts, or a desire to read or listen to the Dhamma, things like that. That's actually it's very important in a sense of motivation or aspiration. You can, if you don't like the word desire, you can call it aspiration or motivation, and it's actually quite difficult to sort of generate this desire or this aspiration. It doesn't come just on its own, usually. And so the Buddha, the way he teaches is, one way you could look at what he teaches is that he tries to on the one hand sort of inspire us or sort of generate a feeling of pasada, of sort of confidence or inspiration. And then when he explains about what is possible if we practice meditation or if we develop the Noble Eightfold Path, and he sort of tries to explain that so that we can have inspiration or confidence, this is really something worthwhile and important. And then we have this sort of desire or aspiration or are motivated to do it. Or on the other hand, he tries to point out the disadvantage or harm if we don't do it, if we don't practice Noble Eightfold Path. It would be this quality of Sangvega, so he tries to sort of stir us up and motivate us, seeing we're actually in a situation where we sort of afflicted by various troubles, and motivating us, how can we get out of that? And so there are two nice similes for these two emotions of Sangvega and Pasada. And so the Sangvega would be similar, like you are sitting in a house and you notice the house is on fire, and then you would be sort of motivated to, once someone is actually pointing out the house is on fire, then you're sort of very motivated to get out of it as quickly as possible. And so this is what the Buddha tries while he's talking about dukkha, and this is all impermanent, and what is the disadvantage of unwholesome states and so on, because he tries to instill this quality of Sangvega in us, so that we actually have this desire or this motivation to practice. And then the other simile would be you're looking for a treasure, and then you sort of find 11 ways to the treasure. And you would be so happy, this is so amazing, I can get to this treasure. And so similar, the Buddha tries to point out what is inspiring or what can be realized by practicing his teaching, and what are the benefits. And then if we understand that more and more deeply and see that in our experience, then again we have this desire or motivation or aspiration to practice the teaching. So it's important to have this, to actually develop this, say desire or aspiration, motivation for Dhamma practice. The next week, the Buddha is still staying in the same place, in the goatherd's banya tree, and then he's reflecting that if someone doesn't have something to revere with respect, one dwells in suffering. And the Buddha reflects, who could he respect? And he notices that if he would respect some other religious teacher or practitioner, it would be because he would have some higher virtue or higher samadhi, higher wisdom, higher liberation, or some higher knowledge and vision of liberation. But the Buddha has attained the ultimate virtue and samadhi and wisdom, liberation and knowledge and vision of liberation. So there is no one who surpasses him, only another Buddha would be equal, which doesn't happen. There's always only one Buddha appearing at one time. And so as he sees no one to respect or revere, he reflects, then may I dwell in respect and reverence to this Dhamma that I awaken to, so to this law of nature that he respects, that he has awakened to. And one can even see in different everyday situations how the Buddha respects the Dhamma. So one time some monk gives some long Dhamma talk, and the Buddha is just standing outside and waiting until the monk is finished, rather than interrupting this monk who gives a Dhamma talk. And so it's the way how he has this respect for the Dhamma, so he wouldn't sort of just interrupt someone. And or similar, no matter from what kind of caste or background someone is. The Buddha says he would teach him respectfully, and if he's interested, if he has some genuine interest, then he would give the best possible explanation. And also because of his respect of the Dhamma. And he sees this Dhamma as of the highest principle or the most lofty thing in the universe. And then naturally, he wouldn't just talk casually about it, but he would give a best possible explanation, whether it is just a simple worker or some king, doesn't matter. He would always explain the Dhamma the best possible way. And then after this reflection occurs in the mind of the Buddha, then Brahma Sahampati, a non-returner, appears in front of him, and he says that all Buddhas of the past, they dwelt respecting and revering the Dhamma, and all Buddhas in the future, they also will respect and revere the Dhamma. And so may the Blessed One now, who is now the perfectly awakened one, also respect and revere the Dhamma. And so this is the short verse that we sometimes chant, or that we have on the stupa up there on these four sides, for the respect of the Dhamma. So Brahma Sahampati speaks this short verse. All the Buddhas of the past, all the Buddhas yet to come, the Buddha of this current age, dispeller of much sorrow, those having lived or living now, those living in the future, all do revere the true Dhamma. That is the nature of all Buddhas. Therefore, desiring one's own welfare, pursuing greatest aspirations, one should revere the true Dhamma, recollecting the Buddha's teaching. And the Buddha is now, after he surveyed the being in the cosmos and reflected about the past awakening, the Buddha is reflecting, and he says, he reflects, this Dhamma that I have realized is deep, hard to see, hard to realize, peaceful, refined, beyond the scope of conjecture, subtle, to be experienced by the wise. But this generation delights in attachment, is excited by attachment, enjoys attachment. For a generation delighting in attachment, excited by attachment, this will be difficult to see. That conditionality and dependent origination. And this state too is hard to see, the stilling of all formations, the relinquishment of all acquisitions, the ending of craving, dispassion, cessation, nibbana. And if I were to teach the Dhamma, and if others would not understand me, that would be tiresome and troublesome for me. So the Buddha reflects, knowing the extent of defilements of beings. He reflects that this teaching to it, this truth that he awakened to, is actually difficult to see for beings. And if people don't understand him, then that will be just a troublesome. So obviously it doesn't make sense. If other people will not understand him, then it would make no sense to teach, because then there wouldn't be any benefit from it. And so these spontaneous verses occur to the Buddha. Enough now is teaching, what only with difficulty I've reached. This Dhamma is not easily realized by those overcome by passion and aversion. What is subtle, deep, difficult to see, going against the stream, those delighting in passion, shrouded in darkness, will not see. When the Buddha reflects like this, his mind inclines to dwelling at ease and not to teaching the Dhamma. And then Brahma Sahampati, who is reading the Buddha's mind and noticing his thought, he thinks, the world is lost, this world is destroyed, the mind of the Tathagata, the worthy one, the perfectly awakened one, inclines to dwelling at ease and not to teaching the Dhamma. And then, just as a strong man extends his flexed arm or flexes his extended arm, he appears in front of the Buddha and appears as a young Brahmin, arranges his upper robe over one shoulder. He kneels with his right knee in front of the Blessed One, the Buddha, and greets him, and he says, "May the Blessed One teach the Dhamma. May the Blessed One teach the Dhamma. There are beings with little eyes, with little dust in their eyes, who are falling away because they do not hear the Dhamma. There will be those who will understand the Dhamma." And then he's encouraging the Buddha with verses to teach. In Magadha, there have appeared till now impure teachings, devised by those still stained. Throw open the doors to the deathless. Let them hear the Dhamma that the Immaculate One discovered. Just like one who stands on the peak of a mountain can see the people all around below, so too, O Wise One, Universal Seer, ascend to the palace made of the Dhamma. Free from sorrow, behold the people, submerged in sorrow, oppressed by birth and aging. Arise, O hero, victor in battle. As leader of the caravan, wander in the world without death. Teach the Dhamma, O Blessed One. There will be those who will understand. And then the Buddha, who has understood Brahma Sahampati's invitation and out of compassion for beings, surveys the cosmos with the eyes of an awakened one. And while he does that, he sees beings with little dust in the eyes and beings with much dust in the eyes, with keen spiritual faculties and with dull spiritual faculties, with good attributes and with bad attributes, and easy to teach and hard to teach. And so just like in a pond with blue or red or white lotuses, some lotuses born and growing in the water might grow while immersed in the water without rising up from the water. Some might stand at an even level with the water, and some might rise up from the water without being sullied by the water. So too, surveying the cosmos with an eye of an awakened one, I saw beings with little dust in the eyes and with much dust in the eyes, with keen spiritual faculties and dull spiritual faculties, with good attributes and with bad attributes, those easy to teach and those hard to teach. And then the Buddha, seeing that there are actually beings who have the potential to realize awakening and to benefit from his teaching, answers with this short four-line verse. The doors to the deathless are open for them. May those who are willing to listen unleash their faith. Thinking it would be troublesome, O Brahma, I didn't speak the subtle and sublime Dhamma. The verses are also nice in Pali language, in original, because this translation was just not really a verse, but it's also nice to hear once a little bit of Pali. Patura hosi magati supumbe, Dhammo asundo samale cintito, apapuritang amatasadvarang, sonanto dhammang vimalina nubuddhang. Sele yata pambata munda nichito, yata pipasse janatang samantato, tatu pamang dhamma mayang sumeda, passadam aruya samanta chakko, soka vatinang janatam apita soko, avekas sujati jarabi bhutang, Uttehi vira vishata sangama sattavaha anana vichara loke deseto bhagavatammang anyataro bhavissanti aparutate sang amatassattvara jisotavanto pamuchanto sandhang vihingsa sandi pakunang napasing dhammang panitang manuche supahme. So it was the original invitation to Brahma by Brahma Sahampati. As I mentioned before, Brahma Sahampati was a non-returner. He was a bhikkhu at the time of Buddha Kassapa, our previous Buddha, and he developed the 5 spiritual faculties and then cut off the 5 lower fetters and reappeared in the pure abodes as a Brahma. And then sometimes, if there's a significant event, then some non-returner will appear and do something helpful or beneficial for other beings. And so then, once Brahma Sahampati knows that the Buddha has accepted the invitation to teach and will start to teach, then he's paying respects and thinks, I created the opportunity that the Blessed One will teach the Dhamma. So also non-returners have mudita. It's obviously important, or actually it's one of the most significant, events in the history of an eon that then a Buddha starts to teach. And the Buddha calls a eon where a Buddha arises and teaches an unfortunate eon. And then a eon where no Buddha teaches is obviously unfortunate eon. So this is the main criteria whether eon is fortunate or unfortunate, whether a Buddha arises or not. Okay, so these were the events that happened in Bodhgaya 2,500 years ago. And the weeks after the awakening of the Buddha, leading up to the decision of the Buddha to teach others the path to liberation that he discovered. And obviously a momentous decision that would influence the lives of billions of people for millennia up to the present day. So one story of the life of the Buddha, the next one at Asala Puja in more than 1 month. Then the Buddha starting to teach